Yeah, you need an initial hole. I don't care if my pants get wet. Where's the lid?
Welcome into Keep It About Ball, bitch.
Just a splash.
Shitbag lizard people.
Bro's QB2 is Aiden O'Connell.
Bucks on Peyton.
Actually, when you add up the pick value, when you crunch the numbers,
Who the fuck's Jennifer?
And welcome into ZBR. I am Zach the Z in the Zebra, here on a solo tip today, here to talk about the results of the Dynasty draft that we are finishing up. I'll get into some of the results and my thought processes, and probably take a look at B&R's drafts, maybe look at some of the other picks other managers made that I liked and didn't like. Make sure you're keeping your eyes and ears open for Big Brady and the legendary Soft R's episode, Brady and Reed. Their episode's coming out this week about the draft. I'm not sure if they're knocking one out together tonight or if they're going to do solos as well. But yeah, before I get into all of that, I want to ask you, please make sure you're subscribed wherever you're listening. Hit that like button, hit the 5-star review if you haven't already. It helps us grow the show a ton when people are searching for their content. And also, before I start, I would like to say thank you to everyone who's been listening for it's a little over a year now. We hit 1,500 downloads at right about the year-long mark, and we're now over 1,600, pushing for 1,700. That's obviously not the most. There's people, hitting, 10 times that in an episode. But it's all been, I can at least say on my end, very worth it. And I'm proud of all of those downloads for sure. Especially the ones coming across multiple ponds. Over there across the Atlantic in Europe, there's Brussels, Belgium listener there pretty much since day one, I'm pretty sure. And I don't think they've missed an episode. I think they've maybe even doubled down on some episodes. So just, I think a true fan we got going over there. Listeners in Japan in a couple of different places. Some OGs been listening there for a hot minute. Same with Germany in a couple different places. Shout out to all you guys, for real. That's crazy. Definitely did not think, for sure when we started this, that especially within the first year, we'd have people like across the world listening to it. I kind of figured it would be a few people local to the, central Kansas area, where we're from. But seeing like the map where all the downloads come from, it's really, really cool. And, yeah, thank you guys. And thank you, of course, to all of our stateside listeners holding it down for real. USA. For real. Love you guys. Thank you. And, most of those are central to Kansas, but that's expected. And honestly, that just means we're getting support from, our friends. So, love to see it. Thank you to everybody who's been listening. I can't say it's been a wild ride or a crazy ride or anything like that, but it's been a ride, and thank you for coming on it. Pause. Whoa. Hey, pause. Hey, yo. Okay, anyways, now that I'm done glazing everyone here, I want to quickly first do a refresher on HDP, the scoring system, and I'll share my team roster, and just so you guys kind of have an idea of how dumb or smart I am based off what you guys think I do with these picks here, and what my thought processes are. So, starting here, HDP, short for Hillary Duff's Prime, is our league name. It is a 12-team, 2 flex plus super flex, 3 receiver IDP league. We have 18 bench spots along with 7 taxi spots. So starting there, it's obviously a fairly deep league, which was somewhat the intention. Yeah, that's kind of the way we wanted it. When I was starting the league, I didn't want it to just be, I'm trying to think of a good example of like, your bottom tier receiver, like Chris Godwin. I don't want Chris Godwin to be, a middle of or a low end tier receiver, just in like a standard 2 receiver, maybe 2 flex, and that's just it league, all normal. Like Chris Godwin's wide receiver 3, that's kind of a bottom tier receiver ish, but like in our Dynasty league, he's where he should be. He's a mid tier receiver. He's a wide receiver 4, which is important because that's probably your flex spot. Yeah, fairly deep league, which is what we liked, or what we wanted, and we did expand to help achieve that goal because we weren't quite as deep as we wanted. Last year. Well, no, that's just a true story. That's not a pause. That's just a true story. And weren't as deep as she wanted either. So we did expand the league a little bit this year. We added the extra receiver, the third receiver. We added an extra linebacker position, an extra defensive line position, an extra defensive back position, and 2 IDP flex positions. We didn't have any last year, and we added 2. So altogether, like 5 new IDP slots, along with 8 bench spots and 2 taxi slots. So we're doing a 14-round draft. Sleeper only lets you go 10 rounds on supplemental drafts, so we're doing the last 4 manually, which is kind of annoying. But I'm really excited, though, because while we're still doing the draft, we're going to go ahead and be able to, like, set our lineup with players we already draft, and we can just, the players in the last 4 rounds that we draft, we can just set them straight into our lineup, and we can also see our matchups for the year, because we're a Dynasty League. We'd kind of like to see those matchups. We are drafting a little late, and I think as we got into in the last episode, probably going to draft sooner next year, but I think we're all ready to see the schedule, so I would really like to get this 10th round done today. I think we're in the 9th right now, almost done with that. But yeah, so here, I'll get into the scoring here. The scoring is a non-standard PPR. For starters, quarterback scoring is 1 point per 20 passing yards instead of 25, or some leagues even do 50. This is to help juice the QBs a little bit and ensure that they are the most valuable position. Just like on the field, we wanted quarterbacks to be the most valuable position. Along with that, to help boost the quarterback value and reward quality quarterback play and somewhat punish bad quarterback play, there's minus 0.1 per passing attempt and plus 0.2 per completed pass. So that kind of it rewards the accurate passer and helps, a guy like a Kirk Cousins who isn't mobile. It helps him make up for that and reward what he is good at, which is being accurate and being smart with the ball. After that, it's 6 points per passing touchdown, minus 3 for INTs, minus 6 for a pick six. All offensive positions have a big play bonus of 1 point for plays longer than 40 yards. And there's also another bonus for all offensive positions that is plus a half point for first downs. And just a little bit of reference for the quarterback scoring and where they rank in our league. CJ Stroud's 41-point game last year in what would have been like a standard PPR league was 70.8 in our league last year. And that was by far the highest score of a player all year. And was definitely an exception. Most games were in the 30s. He got a lot of those big play bonuses that game, if I remember right, and just was super efficient with the ball. And just a dream game. And Nolan cruised to a victory that week. That's 2 Mannings, 1 Cup, his team name. But yeah, like most of CJ Stroud's games were in like the 30s. Josh Allen was QB1 on a per game basis with 37.9 a game there. So you can kind of imagine there where the quarterback value is. So as far as the running backs and receivers, outside of the big play bonus and the first down bonus, it's all just standard PPR. 10 yards, per point, blah, 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 blah. We do count return yards in HDP. Punt returns are 1 point per 10 return yards, and kick returns are 1 point per 15 yards. Excited to see how that goes this year. For IDP, the individual defensive players, that is 2 points per sack, along with 1 point for every 10 sack yards. Solo tackles are 2 points. Assisted tackles are 1 point. There is a 0.5 bonus for a tackle for loss. Interceptions and fumbles are both 3 points, along with 1 point per 10 return yards off the turnover. A pass defended also counts for 3 points, which might be an error. We should maybe change it to 2, but no one's complained, so we're letting it ride. And honestly, it just gives the defensive backs more value, which I think everyone is okay with. And really, the pass defended, it sounds like it would just be a super easy 3 points, but really that's just like a swatted ball, which doesn't happen every single, you get one quarterback might get, 2 of those a game, 3 of those maybe. So it's not like it's a crazy stat, but it could go to 2, but just like the NFL, more points is more fun, so let's let it ride. And then for defense, the bonuses are there is a 1 point bonus for 10 plus tackles in a game, and also for 3 plus passes defended in a game. So as for my team, my roster, I have at quarterback Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Kirk Cousins, Will Levis, and Jimmy Jew. Fraudulent slip. Jeez, oh my gosh, wow. Edit that out. I'm gonna bleep that one. Probably not. But I love my quarterback room. Personally, I feel like I got two guys with top 5 upside. Both still in their primes, under 30. I think like they're 27, maybe 28. I might be wrong. Joe and Kyler. And then I got my seasoned vet who I think still has the top 12 upside, who can either stay on my team if, like I've said before on recent episodes, and I'm sure I'll say again in this episode, I'm all in this year. I believe I got a top 3 roster, and then I'm a contender. So, Kirk could, plays a huge role in helping me, win a championship this year. Or if the year goes sour, he could be a trade piece, and a really nice trade piece at that to someone who is contending for this year. And that's just, I was get a little off topic here. And if I were to trade him, he's someone I would feel okay even trading to someone if I was like, all right, quick reset, reload Kirk, just a reload, not even a reset, a reload, really quickly. Because I think I would still have a roster that could contend if it was like injuries or stuff like that. Or just bad luck. I would feel comfortable selling Kirk to a guy like one of the top teams like Brady, or to Carson, Dong on TDs, London Silly Nannies are their team names, or AB's Welfare, Bryson in the league. Who are the 4 that I see as the biggest contenders, and I guess Derek as well, the Mahomes, one of the new teams in the league, because he needs a quarterback, and that's really about all he needs is like a top 12 quarterback, and his roster would be nasty this year. I would feel okay selling to those guys just because Kirk only does have 1 or 2 years left, and I wouldn't have to contend with it for too much longer. So he is a piece that I would comfortably feel selling off if things just weren't going my way and I could tell it wasn't my year. But getting back on track here, to my quarterback room, year 2 on Levis, excited to see what he does with a new offense, completely new offensive system, new weapons, upgrades at running back, upgrade at receiver. I know it's a little old, but I think Calvin Ridley's still a little slept on. I know he didn't have the greatest year last year. If you're a fantasy player, you've probably heard it at this point. The amount of dropped touchdown passes, or where like his feet were just on the line, it's crazy, and that's not going to happen again. At least I don't think. And DeAndre Hopkins still a baller. I think Tyler Boyd is not a tight end, but as a wide receiver 3, very solid. Chigo Okonkwo is Chigo Okonkwo. It's nothing special. You can do better. You can do worse. And then the running back room, I would say better half of mid tier. I don't because it's decent, but I wouldn't quite call it good. And then as far as Jimmy G goes, he's just there because Stafford is old and falling apart. I'd rostered him last year at some point and just kind of kept him on the stash because he got picked up by the Rams. And I was like, Stafford could... last year, my thought process was Stafford could retire at the end of this year with the injury he had. That's kind of still my thought process this year. And Jimmy G would make sense, especially if he's there this year, for them to say, all right, come back another year, bridge us over, if they draft a quarterback or something like that. Or if, knock on wood, I hope it doesn't happen, Stafford gets hurt this year, which is totally possible because he is old and falling apart, which is sad. And you hate to see it because Stafford's such a likable football player. Just a guy's guy. But it's father time, and it's reality, and it's happening. And I feel like Jimmy G, probably one of the more solid backups you can get in the league, honestly. For fantasy purposes, maybe you'd like Jameis a little more. And it's kind of a similar situation there where it's just a reality, like kind of opposite actually. You might not be rooting for good health for Deshaun Watson depending on who you are. There's not as many people rooting for Deshaun Watson's health as there is Matt Stafford, that's for sure. But similar situation, just guy kind of falling apart, can't stay healthy. You're not sure you can count on him to finish the year. And you got, as again, a nice backup right there. And like I said, you might take Jameis there just because the gunslinger, he's, especially with what Joe Flacco did, he might be the best replacement backup they could have gotten, aside from bringing Flacco back to go in that offense. So I might have just talked myself into some Jameis Winston. But no, getting back on track here, getting distracted there. That is my quarterback room. At running back, I have Breece Hall, Kyron Williams, Chuba Hubbard, Rico Dowdle, and Amari DiMarcado, along with Roshan Johnson, who is on the taxi. At receiver, I have CeeDee Lamb. And yes, to answer your question, as a contender, I am worried about his status this year. I'm worried about, especially his start of this year. I know you don't play to win week 1, you play to win the championship, but if you lose the first 4 weeks, it makes it a lot harder to get to the championship, And I don't want him to come back, be a little out of rhythm and then, maybe get nicked up because he hasn't been getting, hit in practice, getting into football contact mode and whatever. I am nervous. But after him, got Garrett Wilson, George Pickens, Jordan Addison, Khalil Shakur, Demario Douglas, Kendrick Bourne, who I have stashed on the IR right now, Rashid Shaheed, who finished as a high-end wide receiver 3, because you got to remember those return yards, and was honestly a mid-tier wide receiver 2 for most of last year, and I think even peaked at number 12, like a low-end wide receiver 1 at one point. So the return yards definitely matter. Even last year, before the return rules were changing and guys were potentially, air quotes, whatever, going to have more returns. Yeah, it's still a factor. Because teams don't always want to boot it out the end zone. Not always. Especially now that I think that's going to be like a 30-yard touchback. It's giving them crazy good field position. I believe. I don't know. I'm still not totally caught up with all the new rules. I invested in these return yards guys last year before they updated the rules. And then also here, partly because of return yards, Marvin Mims. I do hope his usage in the offense goes up a little bit. I don't think it'll be a ton, but if it's a little bit and he still gets the punt return work and gets, I don't think anybody is going to get all of their team's kick return work, because I'm pretty sure they got to put 2 guys back there. And teams are definitely, when they are going to kick it to people, are going to target certain people, like certain guys and certain sides of the field, I do think. But if Marvin Mims can get, some of it, just like he was last year, I like him this year. I think he'd be a nice piece. Charlie Jones, kind of a year away, I'm hoping, from a similar role from what I'm hoping Marvin Mims will be this year. And then Xavier Gibson, Charlie Jones and Xavier Gibson, both on taxi. I'm not real sure about Xavier Gibson, what to expect this year. I keep going back and forth. Like, at one point, I'm like, oh, man, locked in. He's going to be their wide receiver, too. It's going to be great. And then I'm like, is he, though? But then I'm like, oh, he gets return yards. But then I'm like, is he still going to get that this year? Because I've heard maybe Malachi Corley could get some. I don't know. And just, you factor him in. I'm not sure what to think about him. That's why he's still on taxi. And then lastly, I do have Bills receiver Justin Shorter on taxi. I would say, I'd probably give him to the end of the year on taxi, but I'd say there's even a chance he doesn't make it to the end of the year on the roster. Just because I think there's a chance he doesn't even make it to the end of the year on the Bills roster. And then at tight end, I'm a little thin, just Trey McBride, Tucker Kraft on taxi. For my IDP players, I have TJ Watt starting at my DL since he's dual eligible for defensive line and linebacker. Last year, he was the leader among all defensive linemen. At linebacker, I have Quincy Williams, TJ Edwards, who I acquired via trade this offseason. Both were top 10 in points per game last year for linebackers. Robert Spillane finished 14th in points per game among linebackers last year. He is my linebacker 3 going into the draft. And at defensive back, just one lone guy, safety Reed Blankenship of the Eagles, who was number 8 in points per game among DBs last year. So going into the draft here, I had the 106, the 206, the 210, the 303, the 310, the 401, the 410, and the 510. Before I missed the 6th round, that was part of the TJ Edwards and George Pickens deal that I lost that pick. But that's how I also got the 401 there. My goal going into the draft here was to shore up my RB situation, running back situation, to ensure that an injury didn't screw me late in the year. So I really wanted Blake Corum and Braylon Edwards were going to be my first 2 picks. I was going to go 106 Blake Corum, 206 Braylon Edwards, and then 210. I was going to address my second goal, which was linebacker, and take Ernest Jones, young guy with the Rams, had a good year last year, and should all be uphill from here. So that was the plan going into it. Things did not go according to plan. After being on the clock for about 10 hours with the 106, I made a trade with Titletown, a.k.a. Reed, the soft R, where I sent him the 106 and a 210 in exchange for Zaire Franklin and a trade up in the second round. My thoughts on this are simple. Zaire's going to outscore every player drafted in this first round this year, aside from quarterbacks. And he, damn well could outscore one or two of them. And I was going to use this high capital on linebacker anyways, so why not go get one of the best one and then snag Blake at the 203, right? That's what at the 203. So I'm thinking, okay, here we go. But Blake gets snagged at the 202, and I can't believe it because, there's still guys like Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell, Xavier Legette, hell, even Trey Benson, who's got a way better chance to start way before Blake Corum does. Are still all on the board. But of course, Blake goes at the 202, and I tell you, I remember where I was when that happened. That was like some natural or national catastrophe, kind of natural catastrophe. Fuck it, too. It's a natural catastrophe. It was just a catastrophe. I was at work in the chat, and I literally just made a joke in the Snapchat draft chat that we have going on with a few of us, and something about Blake Corum coming right here. I'm about to take him. And then sure enough, I just see Blake Corum, 202. Blake, oh my gosh. I literally just saw it and said, fuck! Like, really loud. And then, just did that, 5 times and got in my forklift. And I work outside in, a lumberyard. And so I drove into this corner and, yelled fuck, 5 times. Just, yelled, fuck, fuck, fuck. It destroyed my whole plan. And then one of my coworkers actually heard me, and he came over and was like, what's going on? He thought I got into another fight with a customer. It was a bad scene there when I got sniped on Blake Corum. That was really rough, and I think probably the snipe of the draft, if I had to guess. But, pivoted and went and took Brian Thomas, which I'm admittedly pretty happy with. I think he's going to be a monster there in Jacksonville. Yeah, he's going to be great. And I was still able to get Braylon Edwards and, spoiler alert, for my 7th round pick, Isaiah Davis, to sure up that I got Breece's handcuff. And to start the third round, I took Tyrone Tracy because I think they like him a lot in New York, and I think he's got a chance to earn the starter's role by as early as week 8 if Devin Singletary's not performing and Tyrone Tracy is. And plus, I like the way he bounced back after that injury, Paul Pierce style. I like that. And I like that they're calling him Paul Pierce because Paul Pierce is my dude. And then after that, to finish out with the 310 in the 3rd round, I took Jordan Brooks to completely fill out my linebacker core. I've got five top 20 linebackers on my roster. So I got, my 2 starting linebackers filled out, my IDP flex, and I've got a backup, a top-tier backup. Probably the best backup linebacker. I'm not even sure who the backup is at this point. It's Spillane or it's Spillane or Brooks, and I'm not sure which. Yeah, so I feel really confident in that, which brings me to my 401, where I was set to make some decisions here. I was kind of caught on this one, and was probably the second longest amount of time I was on the clock, so I really wasn't sure. Spencer Rattler was right there staring me in the face, and I really thought about it because he was, in my mind, the most valuable player available at the time. I think he's got a chance to start there in New Orleans at some point if David Carr sucks, or Derek Carr, excuse me, which is, of course, plenty in the cards. I don't think anyone expects him to be good. But I can't really justify it because I already have the 5 quarterbacks on the roster, and if we drafted in a more traditional Dynasty draft season, where I would have time to maybe shop him or something, or shop another quarterback, or, move the team around a little bit, I would maybe consider it. But because we are drafting so close to the season start, I don't want to have to stress about moving one of these quarterbacks to find this or to find that. So And I did know Carson wanted him at the 402. And Carson, because he traded into the 402, and I knew that's who he was taking right there, because we'd already been talking about it in the chat. I knew that's who he wanted. Like I said, I already had the 5. And then Reed, Titletown, he sends me an offer. Devin Singletary straight up for the 401. And I slept on that, thought about it the next day, and ultimately accepted the offer. My thought process on this one was, I missed Blake, so I'd like to have another RB3 option if Kyron gets hurt, another guy who's going to start the year as a starter. And like I said, I already have Tyrone Tracy, so even if he doesn't earn that role, that means Devin Singletary is probably staying in it all year, because I don't think Garrett Gray's coming for it. Meaning, I feel like I have RB3 locked up for the year, or if Kyron were to get hurt, which of course we hope he doesn't, knocking on wood there, I would have RB2 to step into the role, and then I can just go back to worrying about Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle being RB3. And to kind of get off track a little bit with them, Chuba Hubbard and Rico Dowdle, I don't think either one might be RB3 all year, but Chuba Hubbard's going to start. Brooks is going to be out to start the year. He's not starting or playing. And they already show you what they think of Miles Sanders there in Carolina. So Chuba, I think, is going to be a perfectly fine RB3 for probably the first, I would say, 8 weeks, because it's going to be a bit of a revamp period for Jonathan Brooks. I don't think they're just going to come in and throw the running back they just spent it's the Panthers, so they might, and just throw the running back that they just spent high draft capital on straight into it coming off the injury. I think probably a 4-week ramp-up period. I think I saw a report that it could be something maybe similar to like what Breece Hall did last year. Sorry, I got sidetracked there. And then Rico Dowdle, I think he's going to have to earn that true like RB3 role, or to earn the lead role there at Dallas to move into that true RB3 territory. And I think he's going to do that, because I think Dallas will find quickly why New England was so okay with letting him go after just 1 year, and just why they were okay with letting him go the first time. I don't think Royce Freeman is a threat. Everything says Rico Dowdle's been, the best in camp, and I think he will be the guy going through the season. I don't know if that's who Jerry Jones wants, but I think once it comes time to win games, Mike McCarthy's going to put people in who are going to win games, because he doesn't want to get fired. And then point B was that Singletary would, of why I accepted this trade, that is. Point B was Singletary would have already gone in this draft if he was available, so I thought the value was nice, because he is a starting running back and put up some decent numbers last year, and is going to an offense that should run the ball a lot, will run the ball, is known to like to run the ball. So call me crazy, I'm actually kind of excited to be locked into the Giants running back room a little bit, which I definitely was not saying at the beginning of this offseason. Definitely not. So right here, I guess, is where I will go ahead and kind of address, I guess, one of the other guys first. And I want to go ahead and say that I love that Reed has come around to going into the rebuild here. I think it's really smart of him. I think when you break down the rosters this year, I think there's 5 rosters that legitimately, like, that are legit contenders. In my opinion, there's 5 rosters. Then there's like 2 teams that are like really close but not quite there. And then there's just the rebuilding teams, or the teams that should be rebuilding anyways. Some of those teams that should be rebuilding are just reloading, and that's going to make for a long reset and a long rebuild when they finally realize they should have just rebuilded when they could have played for free. But Reed, going into the rebuild, I love it because he's got the QB1, Jalen Hurts. He's not going anywhere, so launch the rebuild now. Get it going so you can still get it done while you're still going to have some come out of it with prime years of Jalen Hurts still left. He went and got a couple of quarterbacks. I won't get too into his draft because I want Reed to be able to break down his draft, but got Bo Nix and J.J. McCarthy. I like it because he's got this year to kind of find out a little bit on Bo Nix, like, is he a long-term QB2 for me? Is he, the future there in Denver? Can I keep him? Or is he a bust? And then he also, coming next year, when he's maybe has a chance to contend perhaps next year, depending on the moves he makes this year and what the draft looks like for him next year. I would really think before he's truly contending, it wouldn't be next year; it would be the year after that. But you find out about J.J. McCarthy, and then if J.J. McCarthy's solid, I mean, damn, right there in one draft, you just locked up your quarterback room. You're good on your quarterback room for probably the next 8 years until, Jalen Hurts hits like 34, 35. Yeah, and it starts hitting, getting into his 30s. So you're set there for a while. So I like that move for him, getting those quarterbacks locked up back-to-back. And sold Singletary essentially for Kamani Vidal, who isn't personally the running back I would have gone for, but was probably the best of what was available right there. I would have maybe looked at a future pick perhaps and waited for a running back for next year. But at the end of the day, Kamani Vidal is expected to get involved in some special team stuff. So if he's doing some return work too, and then he's getting, 5-6 rushing attempts a game, he's got a good chance to be a productive fantasy player. And I mean, let's be real, it's not like the guys in front of him are, J.K. Dobbins, who knows what's left there, and Gus Edwards. I'm just that's a pass for me, honestly, hard pass. But yeah, so I like and Reed does have Gus Edwards, so it also makes sense for him to have Vidal, so that when Gus Edwards goes, it's obviously not going to be J.K. Dobbins that steps into the lead role there. It would be Vidal if something happened to Edwards. So I do like the move there. Moving forward at this point, the 410, I am just now down. I am down to just my own picks. I'm done with all the picks I've traded for. So right here, I go Matt Judon. He is old, but should be top 10 among qualified defensive line. And this goes against my
priority
positions. But the two DBs I've been eyeing were already gone. That was Xavier McKinney and the dude in Minnesota, Medalis, I think is his name. He's a linebacker eligible too. He's pretty solid. I was pretty interested in him. They were both gone, so I went ahead and went with Matt Judon here. Before you take out his injury last year, he was on track to he would have finished probably top 5 as a defensive lineman. This is a short-term pick here. Obviously, he's 32. But like I've already said a million times, and I'm probably going to say a million more times in this episode, I'm all in on this year. And so I was like, I'm going to go get a guy that I think is going to perform for me this year. I think he will be top 10 this year, which is all I need from him. And so that was the 4th round, excuse me, sorry there. And so coming back around to the 5'10", the one DB I did, the last DB, the third one that I'd been eyeing, I thought this guy's definitely going to be there available to 5'10". And he was. This guy actually was. He didn't get sniped. Paulson Adebo had a decent fantasy year last year, which was the best of his previous 3 years, where he was showing some fantasy promise actually. And honestly, with DB, they do put up a lot of points. Like I think I've said before. Maybe I haven't. They do put up points. It's definitely an important position to have good players at. I just don't think it's very sticky at all. If you go look at, the top 20 players each year at the defensive back position, it's all over the place. There's a bunch of different names every single year. The most consistent ones I got, Antoine Winfield, and he's not even consistent where he finishes. You go look at, I think it's in, if you 21 from 2020, I think he was top 5. Then 2021, he was I think he was outside the top 20, and then he was top 10, and then last year I think he was top 5 or something, and then one of those years he was mid-tier or something like that. It's just not a super sticky position. So if I wasn't getting the guy I wanted, that I felt like was going to be, because there's only 2 or 3 guys that are consistent, super staying there, and I feel and types of guys, I should say, really. And I feel like that's elite safeties that hang around the top of the defensive back rankings, at least in our league, is safeties and dudes who play opposite of true lockdown number 1 corners. So McDuffie playing opposite of Snead last year, he was really nice. I'm pretty sure he was top 10 there for the Chiefs. And you go back and you look at some of the reasons, and it's just whoever's playing, Adebo on my team, opposite of Marshawn Lattimore. And if you go and look at that, I think it's it's not a lock, but I think if you're looking for defensive back strategy, I think that's a good place to start. And this is, it's only my second year doing IDP, so I don't want to sound like I don't want to try to sound like I know everything about it, but that's just kind of how I look at cornerback. It's a very valuable position, but very hard to. It's not the easiest to predict, and it's not super sticky. Get back on track here. Where was I? But yeah, and just also going back to, or no, never mind. I already covered that. But I guess also random. I guess this is a little bit of rant I did have here that kind of ties into that. I think it correlates on the football field too. Maybe not correlates. That might be wrong, but like I feel like every year in the NFL, you hear it's a different best cornerback. It was Jalen Ramsey, then it was this guy, and then it was L'Jarius Sneed, and then it was this guy, and then it was this guy, and it's just, I feel like every year it was C.J. Gardner-Johnson was in there one of those years, and then fucking Sauce Gardner. It's just every year it's a different dude, and it's just like it's been a while since it was just like, no, the best cornerback in the league is Richard Sherman, or no, the best cornerback in the league is Darrelle Revis, or no, the best cornerback in the league is Ty Law, kind of thing, where it's just like definitive, and it's not just, oh, well, this dude was really fucking good this year. He's the best cornerback in the league. I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Maybe that's a rant. But I feel like that's the case, and I feel like it kind of translates or represents itself, at least in fantasy, that way. And on that note, I am actually going to take a quick break right here, and I will come back with hopefully the 5 through 10 of our HDP draft. Wow, what a terrible exit that was. I'll see you guys in a minute. All right, welcome back in. Glad to say, while I was getting ready for this half and during the break, CD re-signed, so no longer as worried about that. Still a little worried about how much he's missed and maybe just coming back in a little rusty and not quite in contact mode, but glad the deal's done. Glad to know he's going to be out there week 1. I always, you know he's going to be out there, but at the same time, it's like, can we just get this done? I'm getting scared. And also, during that time, I drafted Henry To'oto, which means I'll probably wait another couple rounds before drafting Tolbert now. Last year, he, To'oto, it's hard to kind of a weird name to pronounce. I wonder where that name comes from. But he had a pretty good year, pretty good run early. He was a rookie last year. Had a pretty good run early. The guy on the depth chart in front of him got injured. I forget who that was. And in the 5 games where he played 80% of the snaps or more, he averaged just a hair under 15 points per game. And as a rookie, that's pretty solid. And now he's expected to start, maybe be a little better, probably be pretty productive the whole time. I really feel like that just kind of shores up my IDP room as a pretty high tier there for years to come. Honestly, I feel very confident on my linebackers. I think Zaire is the oldest one at 28, and the rest are all like 26, 27, down to Henry here, who's I think 23. So feeling pretty confident there. Certainly this year, maybe have a trade piece or something if I feel like there's another guy I think I can pick up or something like that. Yeah. Or if, I mentioned earlier, I wouldn't be surprised if the league ends up expanding the IDP more. I don't think it'll be next season, maybe a couple seasons from now, but could be helpful then. I wouldn't be surprised if that happens. But, yeah, that happened between the break. So what I'm going to do here for this last half is I'm going to go through I'm not going to go through every single team and every single pick. Well, I'm going through every single team, but I'm not going to go through every single pick and this and that and be like, well, this. I'm not going to get too into it. Just a quick little excerpt kind of on what I think they kind of did, if I think their draft was good, if I think it was bad, and just kind of, I have a rating for all of it, so I guess we'll just rate it. But it's in no order, just kind of the order that was on the screen. I just kind of went through them. So starting here first was Brady, excuse me, not Brady, Brady. Let's get that right. I like this draft a lot for his team. He missed a shot on MHJ, who I know he really wanted. But I think in the long run, it's better that he still walked away with Daniels. He was my favorite quarterback in the draft. I know it was his favorite quarterback in the draft. And as we've already gotten to in this episode, the value in QB in this league is just so crazy high. And Jaden has such crazy high upside. I think it makes complete sense to go ahead and get another quarterback now, because especially where Brady's at now, with where this draft kind of put him into, and where this offseason, I should say, actually kind of put him into, not necessarily the draft itself, but just this offseason, the situation he's gone from. His team was probably close to contender last year, but just like a team that kind of just barely on the outside looking in, kind of really where I would say my team was for most of the year last year too, but not quite the whole year, and that's kind of how I snuck into the playoffs there. I think it's a little different this year. I think there's like 5 teams that are clear contenders going into the year, where I don't think last year it was like that. I think it was just kind of up in the air, especially with the quarterback scoring. Kind of ranting there, sorry. But I like the Jaden pick. He's got that. And if going back to the rest of the offseason, if we count Chris Olave when he traded his second round pick for, I love that too. He needs receiver. Chris Olave, I know Brady's higher on him than I am. I think Chris Olave at best has very low wide receiver 1 upside, but really should live probably in like the wide receiver 16, 17 range, I think, most seasons, which is really solid. And if Brady is able to find another receiver, like a true number 1 guy, if he could, I'm trying to think of teams with a true number 1 that might be selling this year off the top of my head. Maybe like a Tyreek Hill if Nolan's season is going bad, or maybe he's got a season like that. Maybe a receiver like that he could go by. That really puts him, I think, a little over the top, especially, just with the rest of his draft, which was pretty solid. Got some nice IDP pieces in there. Picked up Ricky Pearsall, Malachi Corley, Darnell Mooney, some wide receiver depth, which you could use. I think if you count the Olave trade in his draft, which I am, because he basically drafted Chris Olave with that pick, I'm going to give it an 8.5, but if you're someone who, no, that's a trade that doesn't count, and you're going strictly just off the draft itself, probably like a 7. So still pretty solid. And just, honestly, Brady probably had the best offseason. And I kind of remember where I kind of started ranting there. I was saying Brady was kind of on the cusp last year, kind of like my team, where he had the roster, was it a clear contender by the end of the year? No, but it was the kind of roster where, injuries and bad luck aside, you look at it and you're like, that team could make a run. It's not a clear definitive one of the top teams, but a team that can make a run. But of course he was committed to the tank last year, which was smart. And I think it's worked out really well for him. I think he's thrust himself right into the contendership going into this year. I think that was a really, I don't want to say textbook way to start a dynasty team, because there's so many good ways to start a dynasty team. If you execute it right, it's really all about execution. But I guess what I would be trying to say is he really did a good textbook execution of the, I'm going to tank the first year 1 of the dynasty, and then come back year 2 and contend. I feel like he really, to a T, executed that, landing when he got Jonathan Taylor and Mark Andrews too in that gift trade from Tate. Which I call it a gift trade, but I mean, if Caleb Williams is franchise quarterback, Tate made the right move on that. Especially not if he's trying to compete this year. Gosh, that frustrates me so hard that he wants to win this year. I wish he would just play for free. But that doesn't matter. I am definitely ranting now. We can go ahead and move on forward to, we're going to go to Ty's draft next here. Another draft I liked a lot. The New York Diversity Hires Ty, friend of the show, was just on last episode. I'm not sure if that was last week. He addressed, I feel like, all of his needs. Is hitting his rebuild right on the dot. I guess it's not a rebuild. I would call it a rebuild personally, if from my point of view. He's not looking at it like that. He's looking at it as more of a reset. Either way, I think it works. got Malik Neighbors traded up to get him, which Giants fan, he's got to go get his guy. And Malik Neighbors, even year one, stands a chance to put up some really nice fantasy numbers just because he's going to get crazy targets. I even said earlier in the episode, I know I said they're going to run the ball a lot, but I just don't think when they throw the ball, they're going to throw it to much else other than Malik Neighbors. And then he got Drake May in at the ninth spot in the first round. And at first it's like, all right, that's a good pick for next year. But now with the injury with Jacoby Brissett and Drake May keeps looking better and better, I'm really hoping, knock on wood again, that's not a Kenny Pickett situation where, like last year, Kenny Pickett looks like he's about to take the league by storm in preseason and then goes out there and shits the bed. I hope Drake May is not part of, like, saying some kind of prototype for, like, yeah. Although I guess they're kind of different style of quarterbacks, but just, I don't know. Not a style, a trend, I guess. I hope there's not a trend developing there. I hope Drake May is not a part of a developing trend. But back to Ty's draft. Ben Sinnott, Jatavian Sanders, huge pickups. I think he probably could have waited another round on Ben Sinnott, but I get it. The only tight end he had going into the offseason was Darren Waller. We all know what happened there. So tight end was obviously a huge need to address, and I think he got the two guys outside of Brock Bowers, who he passed on. He got the next two guys in line, and I mean, if you think about it, they're not in the worst situations. I know I was bashing Carolina earlier, but tight end for young QB tends to be a security blanket. Hayden Hurst is gone, so that's just Jatavian Sanders. I forget who the number 2 and 3 guy is there in Carolina, but it's nobody's. And then it's the same thing in Washington. Rookie quarterback, security blanket there with Ben Sinnott, and I know a lot of people kind of had him as a sleeper. I've been hearing about him as a sleeper. I don't even think he was a sleeper, just because I've heard so many people say he was a sleeper all off season. I think that kind of, by the time at least we were drafting anyways, maybe not during so much normal Dynasty draft season, but by the time we're drafting now, I don't think he was a sleeper. I think it was kind of cooked into his ADP where he was at. But yeah, and then Ty was also the guy who took medalists that I mentioned earlier, and added some other good IDP pieces, and Rashad Bateman, which could be a nice sneaky late pick. I think that was his 9th round pick. And so yeah, I like it. I like Ty's reset mentality, and I don't think he could have drafted more accordingly. I'm giving Ty a 9.2 out of 10. One draft I was not super big on. Nolan. 2 Mannings, 1 Cup. He took Roma Dunze, where he got him, I think it was number 8. The value right there, it just makes sense. And especially, Nolan can't afford to wait a year or two on a receiver as well. He also took Xavier Legette, which I don't hate, and I guess I wasn't bashing on the Panthers earlier. I guess I was thinking about when I was actually typing this up and getting ready to bash the Panthers a little bit. And it's not so much I want to bash the Panthers, it's just they're not that good. And now this team, 2 Mannings, 1 Cup, has, I think it's like 5 or 6 Panthers on it. It's Miles Sanders, Deontay Johnson, Adam Thielen, Bryce Young, Xavier Legette. I think I might be missing someone else too. It's just a lot. It's a lot of investment in an offense that has not yielded much return, and I don't think is going to yield much more return. Could be wrong though. Bryce Young could take that 2nd-year leap. They did upgrade the offensive line, which is huge. Not to go back to Drake May, but if that's going to be a problem for him this year, if they do decide to let him start this year, because that line is terrible. The starters were getting eaten up by the backups of other teams all preseason. So, but yeah, I don't dislike the draft. It's just too much stock in the Panthers offense, and also he drafted Alex Madison, and I just seeing that dude's name pisses me off. And the IDP guys, they were IDP guys. I mean, I feel like there was better guys available. And I don't know, IDP, that is a harder one to project just because there's not as much out there about them, especially fantasy-wise. So I could be wrong. I will humbly say I think Nolan probably or Two Mannings One Cup probably knows ball a little bit better than I do. So I would trust he probably knows some more better defenders than I would, just outside of like fantasy production, because that's kind of more of my thing. But yeah, man, I don't know. I just I think it could have been a little bit better. I'm going 5 out of 10. Derek, aka the Mahomies, had a very solid draft, a first draft in the league. Took MHJ with the first number 1 overall pick. That was you guys heard the reaction to that, so I won't go into that. Took Jonathan Brooks next, which I like. I think that's good. He's got McCaffrey, Barkley. He just traded for Kenneth Walker from me this offseason. And then A.J. Dillon. So I think going for that good young, next up guy kind of running back. I think that was smart of him. We got Jermaine Burton, great value in the 5th round. That was awesome. Audric Estime. And he got some good IDP players, including Ernest Jones, who was the best, I think, IDP prospect out there personally. He was, I think, number 8 last year, number 9 among linebackers. And he's only like 24. It was his first year starting. And just when you go back and look at when he was on the field before he was starting, he was productive. And I think he had some decent draft value coming into the league. So just a really solid pickup there. He should be a cornerstone linebacker for the Mahomies for a while. And Jones is who I would have taken with the where I took Brooks, but instead I took Brooks because he was gone. Giving Derek a 7 out of 10 here. Next up is Tate. Man, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he's doing here. He says he's trying to win this year, but I don't see what the strategy is. If I were him, I would have, after the trade for Caleb, and again, I think for where that team is at, I think that was the right trade to make. Yeah, trade away a tight end and a running back that each have like a year or two left, and go get your franchise cornerstone quarterback. Probably one of the most highly touted quarterback prospects since, I'd say probably since Trevor Lawrence. I would say the most highly touted, and he might even. Man, he gets so much hate too. It's hard to say because I feel like Trevor Lawrence. I don't feel like he did not have so much hate around him. But I guess a lot of the hate for Caleb is personality stuff, not necessarily his play. I don't know. Definitely a top end, quarterback prospect. You don't get you only get those kind of prospects every so often. So I totally understand going and getting that. If you're doing the rebuild, which he should. He's playing for free this year. I'm paying for it because he's doing me a huge favor by stepping into the league since we had someone back out right before the draft. So that's what I don't get. I would definitely very much commit to the rebuild and use this free year. And yeah, which he could still do. That's still. I'm getting distracted here trying to tell Tate how to run his team. But as far as the actual draft goes, he did snipe Blake Corum for me. I didn't really factor that into how I graded his draft. I just don't think that pick made a lot of sense. There's a guy like Brian Thomas right there who's going to be an instant contributor, which you could use. His wide receiver 3 is Joshua Palmer right now, and I'm not sure who he has in his flex. I can see if I can pull that up. But he could use the receiver depth. I feel like Trey Benson was there. He said Trey Benson lost him money last year gambling, and I get that. Yeah, once you get burned by a guy like that in one situation, you don't want to bet on him in any kind of way going forward after that. But I feel like there were still better options up on the board. Adonai Mitchell. If you're trying to win this year, Tyrone Tracy would have been a better option, I think. Maybe even Bucky Irving. That's probably getting to similar range. Probably actually. Yeah, I just maybe not a ton of guys here I would have taken instead. I mean, Xavier Legette's right there. Michael Penix, because he could still use another quarterback as well because it's just Caleb Williams and Justin Fields now. Although I do think Justin Fields takes that starting job, and the QB room is actually probably solid. But Michael Penix would have been nice to so you have your third quarterback, a year or two from now. But yeah, didn't think the Blake Corum pick was the best. I don't think it's the worst pick there either because obviously you were kind of starting to get to that point. But I think that any of the three guys plus Xavier Legette and Michael Penix that came right after would have been better picks, and that being Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell, Trey Benson. Even Jalen Polk right there I think might have been a little better. But again, ranting, kind of beating up on Tate. Jesus Christ. But yeah, honestly, personally, just for knowing that for what he's gunning for, trying to win this year, I'm giving the draft a 3.2. If it was a little more fully committed to the rebuild, I think probably closer to 5 or 6 is where it would have been. And let's go ahead and move on before I fucking shit on Tate some more because I don't want to do that. Like, Jesus Christ. Next up is Watson's Dirty Elf, better known as Tree J. And crazy enough, I won't get into it too deep. But so Tate just joined the league, right? Been in the league. He was an OG member. And Tree J just joined in the league last year, OG member of the Dynasty League. These two dudes actually knew each other, and they have no correlation on how I got them into the league. Like, there's no connection there. And it was like draft day. It was like one of the second or third draft day. And they're just in the chat, and they just suddenly start, and they're like, yeah, I know this motherfucker, blah, blah, blah. And it's just crazy how the world comes full circle sometimes. And just the moment was really cool. And actually, I will get on a little tangent here, and I want to say that the chat activity was fucking top tier this draft year. Especially those first, 2, 3, 4, 5 days. Just everyone's super active in there, joking, laughing, having fun, having a good time. I don't think there was anyone who didn't crack a joke. I guess 2 Mannings, 1 cup, but he's not a chat goer. But everyone else in there constantly, just, yeah, and I love it. And it just, that's what it's all about. So at the end of the day, we take this really serious, and it's all about winning, and this and that, and blah, 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 and crunch the numbers, and do whatever, but it's about having fun, really. Fantasy football's supposed to be fun, and that's what it's all about, and, the fun moments like that, just, I remember thinking that, just, it was one point, I think it was, 2 or 3 days ago, going through the draft, and it's just, all day, it was just everybody's in there, chatting it up, busting jokes, having a great time, and that's just, the jokes weren't wholesome. The jokes weren't. But the moment, the day, it was so wholesome. Just a group of bros in there. It was great. I could talk about how awesome it was all day, but just that was really awesome. Getting back into Tree J's draft, I really liked his first 2 picks, Worthy and Adonai Mitchell at the 104 and the 204. His team ran into bad luck this year, or last year, excuse me. He really shouldn't have been picking 4th. His team was better than that. I would say he probably should have been picking 6th, 7th, maybe. He was one of those teams that he just as easily, and he was actually on the cusp of doing it. He was one of the teams right about where I was last year, where he could have easily made a run, and he could have been the one to sneak in, and I'm pretty sure I was battling it out with him up until the last week or the second to last week to try and get in there. So him and Victor is who I'm pretty sure it was. Yeah, so it was one of those fringe teams, and he just kind of, in where he finished the last 2 weeks once the playoffs started, he just slipped down to 4. So that is how that worked. But yeah, like I said, just really ran into some bad luck, and I think those guys help him at a position he could have used help at last year, which is receiver. And then I think he kind of reached on Detroit's defense. He drafted them in the 8th round of a 14-round draft. I think that's a little rich. And IDP he drafted, in my opinion, maybe a little kind of mid. But still going to give it a 6 out of 10 because those first 2 receivers will go down as good picks, I do believe. And that's where he needed the most help. And IDP, if you're not elite, then it's kind of, you can just kind of shuffle around. It's hard to be bad at IDP, or have a bad IDP room, I should say. But yeah, 6 out of 10 there for Tree J. Next up is OG Snowbone. He did not have a first-round pick, but still managed to have a pretty good draft. Took Michael Penix in the second, and then took Trey Benson, Troy Franklin, Roman Wilson, Will Shipley, Malik Washington. Took some rookie IDP guys, which is cool. I don't know college ball that well, so if they're not, the kind of guys getting talked about, going up to fantasy drafts, I don't hear a ton about them. So I think if he got the right guys, I think that's a really nice move of him and a real advantage he might have over not all of the league, but a lot of the league, knowing some of those deeper defensive players coming out of college. So if those were to pan out, that's real nice. Draft as a whole makes me think he's maybe not doing necessarily a rebuild, but kind of like a reset or maybe similar to Brady, have a really solid draft and tank, have another good draft and come back next year and kick ass. Because I think he's in a great position to do that. If he does that this year, we're to get a top 3 pick, trade Devontae Adams maybe. I think he'd be poised to come back and really put himself in a nice position similar to what Brady did, maybe via trade or through the draft or a combination. I don't know if that is what he's doing or not for a fact, but if that is, I think he's doing it very, very well. And going to give him a score of 7 out of 10. Next up is friend of the show, the Conquistadors, Victor. His draft was interesting. He took Lad 110. I like that. Jalen Wright in the third, not bad. Joe Milton in the fourth, kind of shocked everybody though. Definitely a reach. Definitely a reach by probably, I would say, I don't think he would have gone undrafted, but there's a chance he would have, and I think it would have been in the last 4 rounds, so he would have been available, and he got taken in the 4th round. But honestly, outside of that, I don't dislike it, maybe question a little bit of it. He got Brendan Rice. You got a decent value on him. Can't go wrong there. Jerry Rice's kid. He did go and get Hunter Henry and Taysom value, and Taysom Hill, Taysom value. I mean, he may as well call him Taysom value. That's basically what he is this year and where he's going in most drafts. I like where he got them. I'm not sure I get it because he has Kittle and Kelsey, and it's not like Hunter and Hill are young, and he's drafting them to reset. I almost wonder if he's getting ready to shop some of these guys. I don't know. That's interesting. I'm not sure what the plan is there, but a solid draft. I'm going 5.9 out of 10, just a hair under 6. Next up is Reed. I already mentioned some of the picks and moves I made that he liked. I like that he made, excuse me. I also like Dylan Laube. He got him in the 8th, which is nice, I think. Jalen McMillan was a good pick in the 4th, too. Funny about that. I thought that was Ty's pick just because those two had shuffled some picks, and I thought that was the the pick that Ty got. And I remember in the chat, as soon as it came through, I was like, good pick, Ty, blah, blah, blah. Good value, 4th round, blah, blah, blah. Give it next year. He's going to fit right into what you're trying to do. Just talk Ty up for the pick. Was like, great job, man. Awesome pick. And then Brady just pops up in the chat. He's like, that was Reed's pick. I just go, what a fucking gay pick, Reed. That dude sucks ass. Oh, that was a fun one. Oh, man. But yeah. Really I would say a pretty solid outing here by Reed. Kind of reloaded at IDP after trading Zaire to me. I don't know, like I said about Kimani Vidal, I question that one a little bit, but and some of these other guys I'm just not so sure about or might not be as familiar with, but I'm going 6.5 out of 10 because all in all, I think he made the right moves and is going in the right direction right now. Next up, we got AB's Welfare, runner up in the league last year. This was a pretty good draft. He got second last year, like I just said. Has a loaded set of skill position players, and his QB room is settled. He's got Josh Allen, Anthony Richardson, and Baker Mayfield. So he obviously wasn't concerned with addressing that too much. but he was by far, in a way, without a shadow of a doubt, the most shallow in IDP. He only had one for each position. Everyone else at least had a backup for at least one of the positions. But he didn't. He also got Xavier, but he fixed that. Excuse me. He filled that group quite nicely. Logan Wilson, was on my board. I think he got good value on him. I'm not sure. I think it's Jalen Phillips got kind of slipped. I was getting ready to take him. He got crazy good value on him. He shouldn't have slipped as far. He's going to be an awesome defensive line piece this year. Xavier McKinney, who is my number one available defensive back. And the rest of the IDP he took was pretty solid. And then he also continued to add to his receiver room, Keon Coleman and Jalen Polk. I think with Keon Coleman, you got Josh Allen, so it makes sense, first round receiver, in the NFL draft, take him first round. Hope you can stack him with Josh Allen. If not, he's not worried about a receiver busting. And you still got another first round receiver that was drafted by another team that, might not be ready to go this year as far as fantasy goes, but could be by next year, depending on whatever that shit show is in New England. I'll try and move on real quickly before I get distracted with that. Lastly, we come here to Carson, last year's winner. Defending champ. Honestly, nothing super flashy here, just a smart, safe draft. Brock Bowers slipped to him at 112. So he took him to back up Evan Ingram. I love that. Shirt up his backup tight end. I think that's great. And for a long time, and now he's got his tight end of the future too. And so when he's ready to move off Ingram, he can move off Ingram and trade him, get some value out of him, draft a tight end or trade for a tight end, whatever he wants to do there. I think that was a nice pick. Added nice IDP pieces to what was probably the best IDP group in the league. At least at the end of last year, I would say it probably was him and Reed. Now I think I'm in that conversation, which I'll get into in a minute. But either way, I just already top 1 or 2 IDP group in the league, and he added to it. So I think that's really nice because he didn't even have much in the way of starters he needed, and he filled that out and got some good bench guys too. Similar approach to what I did with Tuoto and Jordan Brooks, getting some top tier backups, and probably actually more so because I don't think I'm drafting backup defensive linemen or defensive backs, so probably even more so. So he probably does have the best IDP room in the league, and the deepest. He also got Bucky Irving, who I think could be real nice. Maybe this year, it might be a year or two before Rashad White falls off his cliff, although I think that could happen as soon as this year. A lot of what he got last year was just volume-based. He wasn't super efficient. Yeah. And, sorry, Reed's here in the chat distracting me. Brady, too. I can't blame it all on Reed. So, where were we? Okay, yeah. And I think the smartest, safest pick he made, he also drafted Luke McCaffrey, by the way. But I think the smartest, safest pick he made was Spencer Rattler. Like I mentioned earlier that he took him. He's got Derek Carr and no backup. So it's just, if let's say Carr brought the suck or just can't play through 20 different injuries at the same time this year, then he's got his QB2 because right now, if you take away Rattler, all he's got is Derek Carr and Justin Herbert, who is dealing with an injury that's known to linger potentially for a whole season, and it's on his planting foot. So I definitely think that was very smart of him to go get that because there's a good chance. I don't think it's crazy even. I'm not going to quite go 50-50, but I'm going to say there's I'm going to say there's a 40% chance that Rattler starts games for the Saints this year, and I'm going to say there's a 22% chance that Rattler is Carson's only available quarterback at some point in the year. I don't think that'll happen. I think the odds are it won't happen. But if this injury lingers with Herbert on that planting foot, all it takes is Derek Carr being bad or not being able to play through an injury, which as old as Carr's getting, I don't think that's crazy to say. And at this point, he knows Derek Carr knows that team's not winning. Is he going to go try to play Superman and try to do all? I don't think he's doing that this year, not like last year. So yeah, I think that was a really smart pick and maybe the smartest and safest pick of the draft, potentially. Anyways, kind of ranting there. Again, smart, safe draft, 8 out of 10 for Carson. And, of course, if I'm going to judge everyone else's draft, I got to try to judge my own as fairly as possible. I already said all my picks, so I won't try to waste too much time here going through them. I think the Brian Thomas pick at 203 might be a bit of a steal. I know I didn't get my guy that I wanted there, but I still think Brian Thomas is walking into a great situation in Jacksonville. Like I said, I don't think Gabe Davis is taking all of, I think Jacksonville had, it was the second or third most vacated targets. I don't think Gabe Davis is walking in to steal all of those. I think that's going to be Brian Thomas. And I don't sleep on Parker Washington. He built a little bit of rapport there with Trevor Lawrence last year and has been getting some first-team work. And they like him in Jacksonville. He's not going anywhere, I don't think. I think there's a good chance he's wide receiver 3 there, and Gabe Davis is simply just a blocking piece by the end of the year. If Gabe Davis is on the field for 60% of the snaps, it's for blocking, and I bet you he gets. I will take anyone up on this bet right now at ZBR Sports, at Zach Got That Dog, if you want to get at me on X or Twitter. I don't think Gabe Davis averages. I'll set it 3.5 targets a game on the season. If you want to throw a bet out there on that with me, get at me there on Twitter or X. Get at the show. But I don't think he's gonna get used like that crazy. I think it's just mostly blocking and the occasional big play, like when they think he's just coming in to block, they hit a play action, and then Brian Thomas and Christian Kirk kind of draw, Evan Ingram kind of draw the defense here. They forget about maybe Gabe Davis. He gets a one-on-one, a favorable one-on-one, gets down the field, makes a big splash play here and there like once every third game, and then just blocks really well. I really think that's about it. I know they paid him decently, but maybe that's not what they expect out of him, but I think it's what should be expected, in my opinion. I said I wasn't going to spend a ton of time on this. It's my team. I'll spend all the time I want to on it. But yeah. If Brian Thomas gets what Calvin Ridley, I think Brian Thomas will be what Calvin Ridley should have been last year. Which if you count the touchdowns that Ridley either dropped or had a foot standing out of bounds, I think it was 8 touchdowns last year, which if you change 5 of those to touchdowns, we're looking at Calvin Ridley completely differently going into Tennessee, completely different in ADP and in drafts, and just where we're drafting him and all that. And I just think he's walking right into that role. He's walking right into that role. Brian Thomas. I think Brian Thomas is walking just straight into that, and should have a pretty monster year. And then I think all the IDP pickups via trade and draft, I think solid, kind of moved me into best IDP room conversations. I'm not saying the best IDP room, but in the conversation. Solidified RB3, and maybe got a potential long-term RB2 with Tracy, and then got the handcuffs, both the potential handcuffs for my RB1. I don't think Israel Adabandakanda's, I don't think he's, I don't think he is. I don't know what I think he is, but I don't think he is. I'm going 7 out of 10 for myself. Would probably be a little better if I'd stuck to my script. But such is life and the lessons you learn. I'm honestly pretty happy with my first fantasy draft, and I'm excited, my first fantasy offseason, Dynasty offseason, I guess I should say. I'm very happy with the offseason. I'm very excited to finish out these last 5 rounds and get the last of these guys on the team, the kicker, the defenses, all that sweet stuff, because I have not carried kicker or defense all off season. Man, I'm so excited. It's almost here. I'm ready to go. If you want to play in the ZBR Podcast League, if you made it this far, you're still listening, you probably should. It's completely free, standard PPR. Once again, get at us on the X or Twitter. You can follow the show at ZBR Sports, and you can get at me at ZachGotThatDog. This is going to do it for me tonight. Like I said, we still got the 5 rounds left, but at this point, I don't think it's going to be anything exciting, just some IDP depth and randos here and there, so I don't think it's going to be anything too interesting. So thank you guys again for listening and hearing my side of the draft. Make sure you keep your eyes and ears out for Big Radies and the legendary Soft R's takes on the drafts. Thank you again for listening today. I know I've already said that like 5 times, but thank you for real for listening, and not just to this episode, but any other episodes you may have listened to as well. One more time, please make sure you're subscribed, drop that like and 5-star review, all that good stuff. Help us grow the show. Please, please, please. It's a free way to support us. And if you really want to support us, get at us on Cash App at ZBR Sports. But you don't have to send us money. We don't need your money. Just share us, please. Follow the show, like I said, on Twitter. I already gave you all the handles. I'm not going to say that shit again. Next week, we'll drop our team record predictions and probably preview week 1 and fucking get into some football. Like, by the time you're hearing this, it's probably going to be like 8 days and some change, maybe 7 days from the start of it all. And I want to say it can't come fast enough, but you know what? I'm enjoying this still, and I've still got off-season stuff to finish up here. And there's going to come a point where it comes and goes so fastly that, you know what? It can. Yeah, I'm not going to say it can't come fast enough, because it can. Because it comes and goes so fast every single year. But, like I said, we'll be back with all that next week. And until then, you guys take care and see ya. Shitbag lizard people.
Bro's QB2 is Aiden O'Connell.
Bucks on Peyton.
Actually, when you add up the pick value, when you crunch the numbers,
Who the fuck's Jonathan?